Hi guys, welcome inside the channel Sharing with People. Today we will again move one step in our journey to be able to automatically generate music shorts or music videos on YouTube, or alternatively generate automatically stories. But before we will be able to do that and fully describe the flows inside the n8n, we also have to set up the ecosystem which would be supporting our n8n. And this video today will be exactly about that. So let's kick off. So in case of ecosystem that we want to build around n8n, we will start with the first things first, and that's Miniconda. So when we install Miniconda, Miniconda is like the smaller versions of Anaconda, and very simply said, it's a system that is used to manage the environment for Python. Because when you start using Python, you quickly realize that some AI tools need some precise version of Python like 3.10, and then they need install specific version of CUDA library in case you use NVIDIA GPUs and so on. So if we install Miniconda, then Miniconda would allow us to create these virtual environments and also install extra packages. So if I just show you here, if we just make it bigger, and if I terminate the ComfyUI server for now, we will just do Conda list environment. When you install it, it will be possible to use it inside your prompt. In this case, okay, that's true. So currently we have actually ComfyUI active, so Conda deactivate, which will put us in the base, and here, okay, it seems it's not listing what is expected to list, but we can activate ComfyUI. So when we have Conda, it will automatically manage and install anything that we need. So for example, if we want to create new environment, then it's Conda create. And for example, when I was creating environment for Higgs Audio, then you give it a name and then tell the Python version. Similarly, if you want to install something specific, like for example precise CUDA version, which means that Conda then also populate and activate your environment variables, you do install like this, and by doing this install NVIDIA label CUDA toolkit, this toolkit would be installed inside this specific environment which currently is active, and in our case that's ComfyUI environment. So if we do this, then we are able to make sure that the environments are separated and we can then use it. So then you simply activate the environment, jump inside the folder, in this case where the ComfyUI is, and then you can just start the ComfyUI and it simply started, everything is loaded and you can use it. And similarly, if you need to create different environment, have specific Python packages and so on installed there, the Conda, or in this case Miniconda, can help you do exactly that. So let me cancel the zoom. So this is Miniconda, very helpful tool to manage the Python environments and install other dependencies, like for example CUDA. Normally in case of Python you can use virtual environment, but with Conda you can also install, for example, some specificities like CUDA libraries. Good. Then next thing that we need, or which is very good, is Docker Desktop. So if we install Docker Desktop, then we can start it inside Windows and use it to load the Docker applications. And then it looks like this. So if I just show you, so in this case here I have NCA Toolkit GPU, Portainer agent. NCA Toolkit, we will describe it in a while. Portainer is a tool that allows you to remotely control Docker containers. So if you have more machines and you want to control it from a single place, then you install this Portainer agent, then you connect them into Portainer server and you can control it from there. So then it's very convenient when you have Docker desktop to use it and run applications through it. So the second thing, Docker desktop. Then, of course, our famous n8n. So n8n, also pronounced as Nodemation, is a tool that simply allows you to build these workflows. So you have some activation of the workflow, then you have blocks that represent some specific functions. There are also blocks that represent AI functions. These days, the AI automation or AI agents are very popular. And then you can also have ifs and so on. So it's simply no-code platform that is allowing us to set up some flow without necessity to write everything to the code. We are just moving the blocks, connecting the blocks. So these connections represent the flow of the data, and blocks are functionalities. Then we can open the block and configure the block and so on. So this is n8n. If we want to start the n8n, we can use Docker desktop. And if we want to start it, let's check the command that we can use for that. And let's discuss what is actually important. So before we move on a command, this is the PC that I'm using to run this AI workflow or automation. So it's Ryzen 9950X. There are two dedicated GPU cards, which is 5090 and 4060 Titanium. Then there are 4 NVMe SSDs, and then we have 96 GB of RAM DDR5, which is overclocked. Now back to n8n. So if we want to run n8n, we just do it through this docker run command. If we want to trigger several runners or flows inside n8n, then we can simply pass and enable the runners. Then in my case, because I have n8n on different box, then I have to disable the secure cookie, but there is a lot of documentation, so obviously you want every security enabled, if it makes sense. If it's enclosed and not exposed to the internet, then you can disable some of these, but ideally, if possible, you should let everything enabled. In my case, because I needed to make it run on different box, I disabled it. Then this is again because I have it inside the different box, then I had to simply change what is the URL returned, and this one is overridden inside Windows hosts, and it's important when you want to use it in connection with OAuth 2 from Google Cloud, and we will see it in a while. Then through these commands, you can simply pass the environment variables, and then you can refer to these environment variables inside the n8n, so that when you move your application into different IP or different box, you would just change this environment variable and you don't have to change everything inside your n8n. And then if you want to work with huge files inside n8n, then it makes sense to use this file system. And then obviously it's a good idea to create the Docker volume so that you have the data stored even if you turn on or off your n8n. For example, when you are changing into the new version. So we have already Miniconda, Docker Desktop. Now let's check the Google API and Google AI Studio. So let me again zoom out. Now if we go into Google Cloud Console, so let me make it bigger, you simply create some project inside Google Cloud Console, and then when you want to start using Google services, then the first thing that you should do is to create something which is called OAuth consent screen. So let's select the new project that I created. It's also a good idea to create a new Google account so that you are not doing it on your primary account until you know what you are really doing, because you can create some security issues or holes inside your defense. But I'll delete the project right after this video. So here under OAuth clients, you simply create new client. You select what is the type of the application, so we can see it's web application, we can call it test. Then here, when OAuth authorizes you, it will give you the simply URL or URI as a callback. And when you want to populate this one, then usually you are provided if you are inside n8n. So if I open n8n and if I go into credentials and if I try to, for example, create new credentials, and I would go into OAuth, so YouTube, YouTube OAuth. So let me just open that. Now I'll just zoom it. So as you can see here, it's giving us this redirect. So this is address that we copy, and in my case, because there was precise IP, I had to hack it through Windows host file, because otherwise when you try to put the URL here, which is the callback URL, let me make it bigger, then it won't let you to edit if here would be IP address. In case you will be running it with localhost, that should be okay, because you will have here localhost. But in case you are running n8n on some different box, you can hack it through your Windows host file. You will simply create a name for IP address, and then you can put it here into authorized redirects. This is how you do it, and then you have to populate client ID and client secret, and client ID and client secret is something that you will get after you create it. When we create it, it will create for us client ID. We have here client secret, so these things are what we will be putting into n8n to use OAuth 2. And then if we open this OAuth client, we can then use it. It takes a while. And when it's done and we put it there, then we can use it. Then when this is published, I believe we have to add test users. So we have already client, but then we also have to if the application is in testing mode, then we have to simply add OAuth users, and we like this add test users so we can use their Gmail. So you have to know what Gmail you want to use, so you put here address, then you save it, and then this user would be able to connect using your client ID and client secret. This is another layer of defense that you will simply precisely specify the test users. And that's how you will set up OAuth. And then every single time when you want to enable some API, because almost all of them support OAuth 2, then for example you want to use YouTube Data API or reporting version 3, then you simply navigate there, you enable the API, and when the API is enabled, you can use it. Good, so now let me delete what we've created. Now you know how to do it, or how to create the OAuth credentials that we will then use inside n8n. Good, so where we are. So Google API, Google AI Studio, if you want to use only Gemini models, and there is some free usage. So Gemini AI Studio. Let me search for AI Studio. So if we go into AI Studio, so again here we will just generate the API key, we will generate here API key, and then you can either use it inside the free tier, or you can also use full Google Cloud under paid tier. Now in case of Gemini Flash, you can see that we have 10 requests per minute and 5 requests per day for free, so it's more than enough to play with it. It's totally free inside Google AI Studio, so when you are trying to fine-tune some prompt or learn how to create prompt, then this button that will print you how to call it remotely is super helpful. If you create some prompt, enter some files and so on, and you want to see how it looks like as an API call, you can use that. There are also some free calls into Gemini 2.5 Pro, but in case of Pro it's like 5-10 calls per day for free, so it's very limited, and then you have to switch into the paid version. So now we know how to start n8n, and we know how to prepare the OAuth 2 authentication, and we know that we can play with Gemini models inside AI Studio, but we have also some free usage through API. Now, because in case of our videos we would be generating video or pictures, so the next thing is installing the ComfyUI. So in case of ComfyUI, if we navigate into the ComfyUI page, there is amazing documentation how to do it, so I'm not going to go through that, but in nutshell, you simply install Git, then you check out ComfyUI. Now you already know that you can use Conda or Miniconda to create specific environment. In this case, if we have RTX 5090, then we should install Python 11. So here, when we will be, I'll just stop it and I'll make it bigger. So here, when we will be creating the new environment, which means Conda create, so we will simply put here Python 3.11, and then we usually also has to install this CUDA toolkit when we have active ComfyUI, which is this. And then you simply navigate into the folder where you checked out the ComfyUI, And that's it. And then you just run the Python, which will install all the dependencies and everything. So here it's like mention how to install it, so you can just follow the steps here and you will be able to make it. Now in case of ComfyUI, there are 2 or 3 things which are really good to do. So first is Triton Windows. So Triton Windows. So you will find Triton Windows, which is tool to compile the code, which then executes on CUDA cores, which are computational cores inside NVIDIA GPUs. So it will compile them so that the code execution is much faster. You can see that currently here is version 3.4, and again inside the Triton or Triton is mentioned how to do it, how to install it, and even here you can see that they are already covering the latest version of NVIDIA GPUs. Now after the Triton Windows, what is very good to do is SageAttention, because the transformer architecture which is used inside many popular AI models these days is using attention mechanism, which can be very costly, and SageAttention simply found a way how to optimize it. So then when we run picture generation, video generation, or even generation of some large language models or inference of large language models, then SageAttention can speed it up like 2 times, 3 times and so on. But you can simply see the documentation here inside the SageAttention for Windows. There is also mentioned how to install it. And now as I was inside the releases, so there are 2 things. Either you will have to fully compile it yourself, or alternatively, if you use this Python 3.11 package, you just download this package, which is already built and compiled, and you only install it through the Python. Again, it's mentioned inside the documentation how to do it, and then you will have SageAttention, and for that you also need Triton installed. And when you have all these things, and you also want to use ComfyUI in remote mode, which means you would be running it remotely, then you simply start it like this: Python listen use SageAttention. So let's do it. Let's start the Python with SageAttention and let's see what it will do. So it will start, and when it's running, let me zoom it out and let's navigate into localhost. So here we have the latest and the greatest Gwen image, which is currently the darling of the community, how to generate pictures. What you definitely should install inside ComfyUI is ComfyUI-Manager, so just search for it on internet and then install ComfyUI-Manager, because then it will allow you to install custom blocks or custom tools which can enhance the functionality of ComfyUI. So I'll make it bigger. So ComfyUI-Manager, if I just show you, it's here, so just search for it. Again, it's mentioned very nicely how to install it, so install it, and then you can use the manager to install anything else. Currently, let's not go too deep, but I definitely recommend installing something which is called MultiGPU, because normally ComfyUI supports single GPU. If you install MultiGPU, then you can split loading of the model on 2 GPUs. So for example, you load the UNet model of Stable Diffusion, which is used to generate pictures, inside 1 GPU, and then for example clip encoder into different GPU, and then you can, by doing this, load actually the full model in higher precision. So for example here I'm loading into 5090 the Gwen image in BF16, which is pretty big. It's like taking 31 gigs of the memory, so almost all the memory. And then in case of clip, I'm loading it into different GPU. And this MultiGPU would help you to do exactly that. And then you are able to generate pictures even with this like super huge model in just 60-40 seconds. And you can use the same trick for video generation models, and then you are able to run them much faster. Together with using Triton and together with using SageAttention. So much about the ComfyUI. We will be getting into that much more later. Now what we have left is NoCode Architect Toolkit, BaseRow and MiniIO. So let's continue with NoCode Architect Toolkit. So if we go into NoCode Architect Toolkit, let me just search for it, NoCode Architect Toolkit. So this is amazing creation for free, which is replacing many paid services. And in general, it's tool written in Python, which exposes the API that can manipulate sound, video or pictures, and it can even remotely execute ffmpeg commands. And obviously it can be run inside the Docker, so if we open Docker Compose, then you see that you can just download it, start Docker Compose, but we are more interested in the Docker itself. And let's see with here we have Docker file, and if you check this Docker file and you would check what is it doing, then it's simply installing the ffmpeg, Python, setting the codec and so on. But there is one problem with this approach. So currently in this version, the NoCode Architect is not supporting the GPU. And that can be a problem if you have something bigger, like you have video which is 20, 30, 40 minutes, then you would quickly realize that encoding and doing everything inside the CPU can take tremendous amount of time. So what I did, I just took this Docker file and changed the Docker file to actually support the GPU execution. And if I just quickly open it, I hope it's here. Yes, looks it's here. So let me open the text. Let's put Docker GPU here and let's make it bigger. So then it looks like this. So because I have 5090, I have to use this base image from NVIDIA. Then we a little changed the installation, that we are enabling and installing the codecs which are needed for NVIDIA to hardware accelerated. And then when it's hardware accelerated, we also have to install here properly Torch, and then we can load bigger Whisper model, because NoCode Architect is using Whisper to transcribe the audio into the text. But again, if it's not supporting GPU, then it's a little problematic. And then when you do this, you can simply build it, but there is one more important point. And the important point is here. When you try to start this NCA toolkit, you have to start it with this special command that capabilities are video. And if you do that, when you are running this NoCode Architect inside the Docker, and you also enable capability video, then and you can also limit which GPU is visible, for example if it's visible 1 or 0. And when you do this, then your NoCode Architect would be able to use your GPU. So then you can start creating bigger videos like 1 hour and so on, and your GPU is able to encode the video, which is then much faster. And then there is direct integration with S3 buckets, into which we will get in a while. Then if you want to use text-to-speech, then I recommend Kokoro Text-to-Speech. This is how you run it. So let's check the Kokoro Text-to-Speech. It looks like this. Let me zoom out. So this is Kokoro Text-to-Speech. And it's simply Kokoro Text-to-Speech, and on top of that is API, so that you can use it, of course, if you have the latest and the greatest GPU from NVIDIA, then you have to a little change the Docker file, but you can see that they already did, that they are using the latest NVIDIA image, and if you build it on top of that image, then you can use it even with 5090. Alternatively, you can pass this visible CUDA devices, and if you have older generation than 5090, for example RTX 40 something, then you can limit what the Docker application sees, and then it will work out of the box. But in case you have 5090, you usually have to build it locally and then use it. And then in case of BaseRow and MiniIO, if we want to use them, so I'll again zoom it in. In case of BaseRow, when you run it inside the Docker, you usually have to increase the shared memory size, so and upload size, so that the runners are able to properly upload the files. But keep in mind, the BaseRow, which is something similar as Google Sheets, don't upload their like 1 GB huge things, but that is mentioned or meant MinIO. MinIO is like S3 bucket, so MinIO would then give you back the URL, and you can store the URL inside the BaseRow. And then there is this latest addition into local text-to-speech, which is called Higgs Audio. Unfortunately, even though they are offering a VLLM version which tries to emulate OpenAI API, so that you can just call it through API and generate some audio, it seems at this point the Higgs Audio VLLM is not supporting current the latest generation of NVIDIA GPUs, so it fails for me. You can run it locally, that's not a problem, but in my case I would love to use it remotely through API, so let's see if they change it. And unfortunately, inside the Higgs Audio, if we just go there, it does not seem that they are actually offering the Docker image so that we can build it from scratch and enable the latest RTX 5090. But Kokoro Text-to-Speech, or if you want to pay for it, 11 Labs is more than enough. And with that said, I believe we've mentioned all the top priorities or top software that I use around my local n8n generators. So now you know it, you can learn a little more about it. And as we will be going farther and farther into the details, then you already know what is the ecosystem around, and you can start building it for yourself. And then when you have the ecosystem, it will be very easy for you to mimic what I'm doing inside n8n. And with that said, I'm left with only one thing, and that's to wish you the most amazing day you can have. And for now, bye bye!